And welcome to the John Baldwin Show here on Victory Radio. Thank you for listening this evening. And I have the pleasure this evening of introducing Burt Depaulo. He is a screenwriter and a producer of a wonderful new faith and family film called Tapestry. Welcome.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you having me.
Well, tell us just a little bit about yourself to kind of get people acquainted with you.
All righty. I grew up in New York in the Bronx. I spent some time in my high school and college years in Staten Island, and moved to New Jersey when I got married in 1987. 3 children. The youngest one just went off to college a few days ago, so a little bit of a tear in Dad's eye. Mm-hmm. And I have a middle son, and my older son and his wife are expecting their first child, so I'm going to be a grandpa next month. So it's a quick summation of 50-something years.
Yeah, you're going to have a busy time coming up, spoiling that grandchild.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, the film Tapestry is based on your own life and struggles that you went through. Tell us about your experience.
John, it was about... The year was somewhere around 2011. I had been working for a financial institution in Manhattan and Brooklyn. I actually was working in Brooklyn at the time, but the organization was headquartered in Manhattan. And I'd worked there for 25 years, and I felt pretty good about myself. I had a lot of success. And one day, I got called in to see my manager. Now, there was some talk at the time, some murmurings that maybe there were some changes going on in the organization. So I wasn't completely taken off guard, but I didn't think anything that bad would happen to me because I felt like I was highly regarded and my performance record was good. So I go in to see my manager, and sure enough, sitting in the room with him there is himself and a human resources representative, and they tell me that my job's been eliminated, and there really is no replacement position for me. That basically that was it. I had 30 days to go home and sort of think about if I wanted to stay with the organization, I would have to consider other roles, possibly roles not as important or as financially rewarding as the one that I had. So I went home, and I was very distraught, very depressed. I couldn't believe what had happened to me. From a family standpoint, my oldest son was getting ready to go into college. We had just planned a big vacation for my family, so we had bills and expenses, and suddenly I was without a job, or it looked that way. So that was the beginning of what turned out to be a lot of other negative things that would eventually happen in my life at that point in time.
Yeah. And you kept, I understand you kept a journal during this time?
Yes, I did. I mean, I've always been a person to write. Generally, I've written, like, fictional-type short stories, maybe like science fiction type of things. But I did, when my daughter was born back in 2000, she was born in 2001. But in the year leading up to her being born, I had actually kept a journal, and sort of like what an expectant father might be going through as he readies himself for another child coming into the world. And so I was starting. I guess that was my first experience of sort of chronicling my own life experiences. And then years later, when I had this experience in 2011. And it wasn't just a work thing. It was my mother was ill. My marriage, I felt, was weak at that point. My oldest son was going off to school, so there was that feeling of, my children were starting to get older and sort of not need me as much in their life. So there was a whole lot of things going on, and depression and anxiety started to set in, and I was really a mess. I managed to keep my job, and I stayed with the same company, but I had to take a job that was lesser in stature in a geographic area that I didn't want to be in. So I was very unhappy. I was very disenchanted with life in general, And to your point, yes, I started to write down a lot of the feelings that I was having. I found myself when I thought about myself at that time, and again, I was feeling very down on myself, down on my confidence. I started to compare myself to my own father, who to me is the greatest father there ever was, and he's still alive. But when I say that he ever was, I mean he still is. But I guess I started to wonder what happened, why did I never live up to that? Here I was at a stage in my life, and everything just seemed problematic to me. It made me doubt myself and doubt my importance in the world and to my family. To some degree, writing this stuff down was helpful, just in terms of the therapeutic side of it. Just getting stuff. I guess it was the equivalent of talking to a psychiatrist. I was talking to a piece of paper, so it helped me a little bit. But it also led me to that place where I eventually realized that I had a story to tell.
And how did you feel the presence of God during this time?
I didn't realize that God was there. I came to realize later on that a lot of things that were happening in my life were purposeful, and that they were being orchestrated by God. For instance, just the fact that I was working in Brooklyn and I was transferred to work back in Manhattan, which I really did not want to be in Manhattan. It was, a tough commute for me to go in there. And, when I think about it now, had I not been transferred to Manhattan and taken this job that really made me unhappy, I never would have met the people that helped me make this film. The first person was a gentleman by the name of Michael Jacobone, who is also one of the producers on this film. We were working at the same bank, and I was, commiserating to him about, how miserable I was in my life. And I started telling Mike about the story that I had written, or these notes that I had taken about my life, that I started to kind of form into something. And Mike was very taken with the story. And, so again, it's that kind of thing where you don't realize it while it's happening, that God's doing all of this. But I think the turning point for me was when I was probably at the low of my existence, and really just not knowing what to do with myself. I happened into a bar in Staten Island. It was a club where they would have bands play at night. And somebody had told me about the place. I said, whatever. I was aimless. I just didn't know what to do with myself. Went in there, and sure enough, there's this guy in there by the name of Jim Higgins. We called him Worm. He was a guy that I grew up with. And I had not seen this guy in 35 years. He moved to California. We had not stayed in touch. And suddenly here he is in this bar. And he started talking to me and kind of talking me off the ledge a little bit, questioning me, why did I not follow a life of becoming a writer? Because that was something that he saw me when I was young, that I had an interest in writing. So the feeling that I had was that God made it so that he and I would be there at that same time. And even beyond that, John, the amount of different things that had to occur in order for me to be there at that given point in time. There were things that happened at my job that day. That my daughter was sick the night before. It was just a whole maze of pieces, a tapestry, if you would, of these different things that had to occur in order for myself and Jimmy to be sitting down at the same exact moment and the same exact night. And to me, that I felt the presence of God at that point.
That's amazing. It is amazing how He can sometimes take situations we wouldn't consider ideal and use it for His purposes.
And yeah. I still to this day, I can't say for sure what it is that God wanted out of me. I mean, I think in the movie, I sort of allude to the fact that possibly maybe God wanted me to be a writer. Maybe that's what this is about. Maybe it's something beyond that. Maybe there was something that in this movie God wanted me to say. He wanted the people to see this film and maybe take away a certain message. One of the themes in the movie is also the relationship with the main character and his father. The main character is played by Stephen Baldwin, and his father is played by Burt Young. And, you know, there's a sense there that the Burt Young character has gone away from God because of an incident early in his life where he was very upset and he felt mad at God. And towards the end of the movie, because of the actions that Stephen Baldwin's character takes, it gets his father to a point of kind of reconsidering God. And sometimes I think maybe that was where God was going with this, because my own father in real life had experienced that sense of being very close to God in his early life and then drifting away. So I think at times maybe God wanted me to do this to help my father. There's so many possibilities that obviously I can't possibly know.
Right. Well, that's wonderful, though. Well, you touched on it just a minute ago. The film has several well-known actors and actresses. Tell us about the wonderful cast and how they came to be involved with the film, because that in itself was kind of a miracle.
Yeah, you're right. And when we think about it, I mean, that even more, exemplifies the idea that God wanted this film made because it doesn't really, it sort of defies logic that a film of this size, when I say size in terms of the budget of the film and a lot of the other actors and crew involved in this movie, even some of the production people, are relatively inexperienced. I had no experience in filmmaking prior to this. Like I said, so many other people. So to some degree, we were a bunch of apprentices making a film, and somehow we managed to get legitimate stars in it. So it is amazing. The thought process was when we started that we didn't have a big budget. The budget primarily consisted of myself being the chief investor in the film. And we were going to do this on a shoestring type of a budget, utilizing actors and crew that were more in it for two reasons. Either one, they wanted to get some exposure to the business, or they were strongly Christian individuals who believed in the project because of its subject matter. So we started putting this movie together, and there was no talk about legitimate stars of the caliber that we discussed. And then a funny thing happens one day. Ken Kushner is the director of the movie. He was sort of the brains of the film early on, because he had some experience in film where myself and Mike had not. And somebody that Ken knew of had a small connection with Stephen Baldwin, and suggested to us approaching Stephen. And our first reaction was, we're wasting our time. I mean, Stephen doesn't know us. We're kind of amateur filmmakers at that point, so we really don't think Stephen is going to give us the time of day. But we went through the motions, and we contacted his agent, and magically, he showed an interest. We thought maybe he would just take on a very small role, a cameo. We'd pay him a little bit of money, we would attach his name to the film, and it would give the film some credibility. But when Stephen read the script, he was very moved by it. He liked a lot of what it had to say, and he volunteered, so to speak, that he would play the lead in the film. We were flabbergasted. I mean, we just could not believe the good fortune. And suddenly, this film that looked like it was going to be a very small film that maybe would not be seen by a whole lot of people, maybe not even ever get completed, suddenly we had a legitimate star with us. And that just kind of opened up the door to some of the other talent, because once people saw that Stephen was in the project, other people wanted to be part of it.
Right. Now, you mentioned Burt Young, and when I first saw his name, when you sent the information, I'm like, I know I've heard that name somewhere. Tell us what people will likely remember him from.
I guess the one that seems to jump out all the time is the role of Paulie, who is the brother-in-law in the Rocky movies. He plays Sylvester Stallone's brother-in-law, and he met, I don't know how many Rocky movies there were. There were 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever.
Yeah.
I think he probably in all of those, dating back from like 1976 to like almost present day. But he was in some other shows on television. I believe he was in The Sopranos, and he's kind of known for playing sort of a gangster type or a little bit of a rough type of a guy. He was in a film with Mickey Rourke called The Pope of Greenwich Village back in the 80s possibly. So those are some of the things that people remember him for, but we found him, even when we met him personally before we filmed the movie, he was totally different than the persona that he seemed to have on film. He wasn't a tough guy. He was a very sweet guy. He didn't know me from nothing. He welcomed me into his house. He gave me a big hug. I mean, he was just like a big teddy bear and just like a very, very warm-hearted person.
Yeah. I remember he had so many, they gave him some great lines in the Rocky movies, some great one-liners. And I remember one they said, I forget which movie it was, but Rocky said, somebody had hit him in the head. He said, I see 3 of him out there. And Burt Young's character, Paulie, goes, well, hit the one in the middle.
Right. He had some great, I guess there was a scene with the baseball bat when he's going to like hit Rocky or whatever. Yeah, there's some very iconic scenes in there for our friend Paulie.
Yeah. And there's a certain actress that everybody might remember that's in your movie too. Tell us about that.
Tina Louise came to fame in the 1960s in Gilligan's Island, and what's so kind of strange, not really, I don't know if strange is the right word, but I mean, that show only lasted a few years. Yet, because of, I guess, reruns and things like that, even to this day, Gilligan's Island is seen around the world, and it seems like there is not a person alive, or at least, anybody who was, let's say, alive in the 60s certainly knows who she is. Yeah. What we found similar to with, like, Burt Young was that, where he was known for the Paulie role and she was known to play Ginger in Gilligan's Island, when we looked at her resume, I mean, she might have been in easily a couple of 100 television shows, different shows over the years. She had made films. She was even nominated for a Golden Globe Award before Gilligan's Island was even on the air. She was in a major film in, I believe, the late 50s, so she was extremely young at the time, and she received an award for like the most aspiring young actor of that year. So she's got a tremendous resume. Like Burt, I spent time prior to the movie. We went out to lunch with her and myself and Mike and Ken Kushner, and she was very down to earth, very interested in things like children's literacy. She actually suggested we put a scene in the film where her character is shown reading along with her granddaughter because she feels so strongly about literacy in America. Mm-hmm. So very beautiful woman, inside and out, and a true professional to see working. It was surreal. I mean, these were my heroes growing up, and here I was in the room with them collaborating.
Wow. And what was it like watching Stephen Baldwin bring your story to life?
At times, I mean, the one part that jumps out to me is that there was a scene that he was playing, and he actually came up to me, and there was a long speech that occurred at the scene, and he approached me and asked me if he could change some of the words around, which, in all honesty, really, he didn't have to do that. I mean, that was really a decision more between him and the director, how they're going to handle, a scene. I mean, once the screenplay is finished, to some degree, I'm out of the picture. The director takes over, and then if the actor has ideas to discuss with the director, they'll discuss them. But Stephen approached me, and I just felt so honored and respected that he actually cared what I thought, and that he knew that this story was close to me because it was about me. And I think he felt like if he was going to make any changes to the script, he kind of almost wanted me to feel okay with it. So that was kind of a cool experience, seeing him care enough to want to try to get it as close as possible to the way I would have liked to have seen it.
Wow, that is really cool.
Yeah.
We're listening to the John Baldwin Show. This is on Victory Radio, and we're talking to Ron Depaulo about his movie about some struggles he went through called Tapestry. Before we go any further, tell folks where they can find Tapestry and purchase it.
Okay, thank you. So I got a little bit of a list here. I'll try to run down them fast because there's all different kinds of venues and ways to do it. From the standpoint of streaming the film, which typically, I mean, the film is available on DVD, and people can go to like ChristianCinema.com and a couple of other places, or they could even go to the Bridgestone Multimedia website, which is our distributor, and look to purchase the film in DVD format. But if people, nowadays seem to tend to more watch it online on their computer or on their television, so people can go to Amazon Prime if they have a subscription, Vudu, iTunes. I mentioned Christian Cinema, Xfinity. People that have Comcast cable television, they could go on to their Xfinity On Demand. And as of somewhat recently, we're now part of PureFlix's library. So again, people with a PureFlix membership can watch the film as well. One thing I would suggest, because sometimes I may even forget things, like there might be another way that people could watch it that I might have forgotten. Mm-hmm. We do have a Facebook site. We don't have a website, but we do have a pretty thorough site on Facebook called Tapestry Movie 2019. And if people go there and they want to like the page or whatever, but they could also scroll down and they may find a lot of information about places that the movie has been is able to be seen. Also, they might see other articles that have been written about me and about the film, similar to some of the things that you and I are talking about now, just like about how we got the actors and about, what was my, motivation for making the film. So I would definitely encourage people to check out our Facebook pages. There's so much. There's a lot of pictures, there's information, a lot of good stuff.
Well, you talked about Stephen Baldwin, one of the experiences there, but are there any other neat or wonderful experiences you had in the process of making the movie that you would like to tell us about?
There's so many in some ways. What was kind of cool was that we filmed the majority of the scenes. A lot of the scenes take place in the main character's home, the home that is lived in by Stephen Baldwin's character and his family. And what we used as that house was actually my brother's house in Comac, New York. My brother Rick and his wife Lorelei's house, and they were gracious enough to let us use it. And I remember even now, and this was 4 years ago, whatever, that we started filming the movie, that I had slept over at my brother's house the night prior. And I remember getting up in the morning all excited, kind of like a kid that was getting up and to go on vacation or something like that, and couldn't sleep the whole night because he was so excited. And I wake up in the morning and I hear, people ringing the bell. And I look downstairs and I see people coming in with equipment. And a couple hours later, I see a car pull up with Tina Louise in it, and it's like a mind-blowing experience that this is really happening. There's part of me that has always loved movies and always wanted to tell stories. And here I was, at the age of 53, whatever I was at the time, seeing all of this happen in front of me, and it was like I had to pinch myself to see if I was really awake or dreaming or whatnot. It was so amazing.
Was there anything about the process that surprised you? Maybe something you didn't know about the way they made movies that kind of was an educational experience?
I think one of the big takeaways for me and the folks that I work with was that the importance of sound in a film. You know, I think we think about film as a visual medium, you know, and as long as the pictures look good and we like what we're seeing, that the film is going to work and make sense and be enjoyable. But what we found, and we did have some struggles with sound in the film, just the way we captured the sound, there were some glitches here and there. And as we tried to edit the movie afterwards, we realized that because of the lapse we had in certain places with sound, that it caused certain scenes to not work as well, or in some cases maybe not even completely make sense. So we really had to try to overcome this. And, you know, we did this in a few ways, and we did some reshooting of some scenes. We added some storyline late in the game. As late as like 2018, we were filming some additional scenes to bring some points across. We utilized music, a lot more music than we anticipated, because we wanted the music to help, you know, set the mood in certain cases. And the last piece was the narration in the film. Goes back to a little bit with your question about, you know, learning something. There seems to be a lot of schools of thought about narration in movies. I always thought narration was a cool thing. I think about some of the movies that, you know, I've watched over the years, maybe even something like Shawshank Redemption or some others, that you get a narrator in there, and it just seems like it adds like a great element. Mm-hmm. But there's other people that think that it's not the highest level of filmmaking. Maybe it's cheating a bit, because instead of letting the story tell itself, you're giving the narrator all of that power. So there's a lot of schools of thought. I was always a big proponent of having it, but I think that because of the issues we had with sound in the movie, where at times maybe you couldn't pick up, you know, a certain line in the film, the narration became sort of a savior to us in terms of being able to make the movie complete and make it understandable. And I think it lent a lot to the emotion of the mother of Stephen Baldwin, you know, telling the story through her eyes. Mm-hmm. Something about, I guess, a relationship with a mother and a son. There's something there that's very sweet. How a mother protects her son, and we saw that in the movie, and the narration I think really helped drive that home.
Well, have you gotten any feedback from folks who have seen the movie?
We have. A couple of the ways we get feedback, we do get a lot of messages sent to us directly through Facebook, and it's amazing. I mean, I've heard from people in different parts of the world that somehow were able to see the movie one way or another. The feedback is generally that they feel that the story is very realistic. It's a little bit more, some people have commented that a lot of faith-based films that they've seen over the years didn't feel as realistic. Everything just felt like it just wrapped itself up too perfectly. Whereas I think this Tapestry movie still leaves a few questions at the end, and still kind of leaves the viewer saying, you know, life is not perfect. There's no exact happy ending, but God is there, and that's the happy ending. You know, that God is there, and we are going to continue to struggle. You know, we could have made the movie a perfect ending, but then what happens to that character next week? Something else could happen to them. So we wanted to tell a story that people could believe. People feel it's very relatable, that people seem to have experienced at least one or more of the things that the character in the movie does, whether it's problems at their job, their marriage isn't going well, their kids aren't paying attention to them, they have a sick relative or a relative that's passed away. So most people that have seen this, this is a very common comment I get. People will tell me that they felt when they were watching this that they were watching their own life story, or that, hey, you can make a movie about me, Rob, because I see a lot of myself in that character. So that's kind of a very nice thing to hear. It's very rewarding to know that we hit on something that resonates with people.
Well, are there any other projects that you're currently working on?
mean, so much in the last year especially was really trying to, 2018 was just a big push to get this movie out. I started working on a couple of things, and I kind of put them to the side. And now 2019, the last 6 months has been all about trying to promote the film and talking to all kinds of people to get them to spread the word. So I would say, like, hopefully by January, I'd like to get back to my, another project. A friend of mine, Vincent Lopreto, who was one of the film investors, and he also played a nice little role in Tapestry. He played one of the guys playing cards back in the 70s, and they were debating about the existence of God. And Vincent came to me with a script about a couple of years ago, something that he sort of had on his shelf for a while. And I would like to work with him to maybe help produce that without giving it totally away. The general idea with the story is it is a 20-year-old Caucasian male and a 13-year-old African-American girl, and they are stranded in the woods during a terrible storm, and one of them is injured. And it's sort of a story of survival, but there's also racial issues, and they both have family problems, and so there's a lot going on there. And I read the script, and I was very taken with it. And Vincent and I have talked to a few others about it, and we're looking around at this point for potential investors for the film. So that would probably be my next project, and then beyond that, I have 2 or 3 of my own story ideas that I've partly developed that I'm looking to partner with another writer and work on. So I definitely want to stay with the faith-based genre. I love it. I feel in a sense like I owe it back to God. God gave me this gift to make this movie, and I feel like we do honor God in the film, but I'd like to honor Him even more by continuing this work.
Before I forget, you actually had a small part on film in Tapestry. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I don't know about yourself, but I feel like me and just about everybody in the world are like frustrated actors, and we'd all love to at some point, we look at ourselves in the mirror and we start doing a scene from an old movie or something. So I've always had a little bit of that acting bug in me. I did a teeny bit of acting when I was in college, nothing major. And like I had mentioned before, when we were first starting to cast this movie with unknown actors, there was thoughts of me playing a somewhat major role in the film. The director had even mentioned me playing the lead in the film, and I wasn't trying to be humble or anything, but I said, there's just no way I could do that. I had a job also, so I would have had to take off from work for 5 or 6 weeks, and I couldn't do that. So we talked about different roles for me, and we came up with a role that I liked a lot because it was a piece of my mother's life. When my mother was about 15 years old, her mother died in real life. And she's always told us about her mother because we never met our grandmother, because she was about 40 when she passed away, and my mother was 15. So we sort of knew of our grandmother through stories from my mother, and I always just sensed this feeling of regret that she had not had her mother with her in her whole life, to see her get married and have children and all that kind of thing. And there's a scene at the beginning of the film which shows Stephen Baldwin's mother's character as a young child, and she's going off to the other room of the house where her dying mother is, and her father is played by me, and the young Tina Louise character is actually played by my real life daughter Bethany. And so it was just great to work with my daughter as well. And this scene meant so much to me because of the emotion that I had, knowing that I was depicting something from my mother's life that was very important to her.
Well, tell us again where folks can find this movie and find more about it.
Okay, like I said, I think that the best place to start is Tapestry Movie 2019 on Facebook. The movie being streamed on by Amazon Prime, PureFlix, Comcast Xfinity. People could look into people that might have iTunes or Vudu. ChristianCinema.com is a good place to go to look to possibly rent a movie or buy a DVD. But I think the best place of all is our Facebook site, because we tried to take about everything, all the information that's out there, and kind of capsulize it into the Facebook page. So it's, again, it's Tapestry Movie 2019. Certainly, if your viewers, or your listeners rather, have any sort of questions that you receive, by all means, forward them to me. Any emails I get or any texts I get from anybody regarding the movie, I always answer them in a very timely manner. So, please encourage your listeners to ask questions on our site or yourself, and then you can relate to me if you like.
That sounds great, and we'll definitely be praying for the movie, the success of the movie. It sounds wonderful, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again when your next project is starting to take shape.
I appreciate that, John, and for myself and the other producers of the film, Ken and Mike and all the others, God bless you for having me on and giving us a chance to talk about this. It's the only way the movie is going to get known out there, is if people like yourself help tell other people about it. So we really appreciate that.
And that will wrap up this week's edition of the John Baldwin Show here on Victory Radio. Thank you for listening, and keep your dial tuned right here on Victory Radio.